I'm here with Jonathan Goldstein. He's a friend of the show, friend of the network, out of Connecticut, Greenwich, Connecticut. Been very active in conservative politics in the state, and he's somewhere else today. What are you up to, Jonathan?
I'm in Branson, Missouri. I've never been here before. It's an absolutely beautiful place, and I'm here for the National Association of Christian Lawmakers conference, their annual conference, and they're just an amazing organization. And here to speak about the humanitarian crisis in Israel for the Druze people, for their brothers and sisters in Syria, and the genocide that took place earlier this year.
So, who are the Druze? A lot of people have heard the name, but they don't really know what they are.
Well, this is probably one of the number one issues of what is a Druze, and to most people they think they're Muslim. They're like an ethno-religious group, just like Jews are. We're both a religion and a people, and they recognize prophets or mentors being those of the Abrahamic traditions, and also Jesus, John the Baptist, their main, also Muhammad, their main one is Jethro. So they kind of, I would guess the best way I'd say it is they kind of take a little bit from each one of the three Abrahamic traditions and blend them. And it dates back, I believe, to the 11th century.
And these are mostly in southern Syria. Am I correct?
That's correct. They're mostly in an area called Suwaida. And then Suwaida goes into the Golan Heights. And so you have a lot of a Druze population in Israel. And they're the most loyal, friendly people that you can ever meet. And I would say they have that kind of John F. Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country type of service. And almost every Druze man I've ever met has been in police, security. They're in Israel, they're in the IDF. I met one mayor. He basically said that if you are not one of those things, no one's going to marry you. So it's a prerequisite for a Druze marriage.
That's an important thing.
It is.
So when Golani took over Syria, the former Al-Qaeda member, he got a shave, he got a haircut, he could put on a suit, took over Syria. And the first thing he did was kill 10,000 Druze and a few thousand Christians in southern Syria. So tell us about that and how Israel was trying to help that situation.
It's a very, I hate saying it's very complicated. That's not a political answer. Like, that's a great question. No, it's a really challenging issue. So there was a massive genocide that happened in July. And at that time, I knew very little bit about the Druze, just like I'd say almost everybody. What is a Druze, right? We just went through that. So, and I received a call from a friend in Israel, and he said, we have to help the Druze. And sometimes you feel the call, and I'm at a Christian conference, and the term being called is very deep in Christianity. And I just stepped up. And so what happened is you had this massive genocide in Syria, in southern Syria, in the Suwaida province primarily. And all aid has been cut off to Suwaida. And in addition, unlike other parts of Syria, there's about 18% of the population is Christian. And in other parts of Syria, they're kind of scattered. So in one way, the Druze are a protection for the Christians in Syria. So the Druze are defending Christians as well. The Israelis Druze population, which is a significant, small population, but very important. And I'll get into sort of their representation in a second. But, they rallied behind Christians and they were persecuted even more. And so if you can't understand what a Druze person is, number one, we'll have to teach them at another time. But if you're a Christian and you understand that there's Christians being persecuted and religious freedom is at stake, as well as humanitarian aid is 100% not there, that your call is to step up and protect people who need to be protected. And so that's kind of the region. Hospitals were destroyed. I get text messages that there's no aid. That people need, life-saving aid. So that's kind of the background of the genocide that happened. And so you're going back to Al-Jolani, the Golan, that his name is kind of like the destiny to take back the Golan Heights, which, was taken by Israel, or however you want to say it, following the war. So he changes his name. He's an Al-Qaeda terrorist. He had a $10 million bounty on his head from the United States government. and all of this kind of just goes away with the fall of Assad.
Yeah.
He comes to power. He's not elected, and he changes his name, trims his beard, puts on a suit. And what I'll say is, so MK Hamid Amar in Israel, he's Druze. He represents the Druze. He was part of a delegation to the United States. One of the things that he said is, you can't turn a tiger into a vegetarian.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't change. So,
and there's a lot of videos online, and we even reported it, of making the Druze crawl like pigs and shooting them and crucifying Christians, and it's really dark.
And shaving the mustache is a very, like, I mean, I'm sorry I just did that, but he came to Al-Shara, Golani, whatever you want to call him. He came to the UN, and there was a pretty decent protest, one in support of him on one side, and then there were Druze also, and they were doing the sign of shaving the mustache. Women have been kidnapped. There's trafficking. It's all the horrors of October 7th with the terror force of Al Qaeda of September 11th.
It was pretty bad. So Israel actually opened a corridor, and there's video also of a lot of Druze inside Israel wanting to go up into southern Syria and help their brothers fight this. Correct?
There's apparently a corridor. As far as it actually working, I don't think it's doing that. Israel wants to be part of the solution. If you heard Bibi Netanyahu's speech to the UN General Assembly, which every Arab nation walked out on in a real cowardice moment in history, he specifically mentioned the Druze in Syria. He specifically mentioned the Druze that are so important to Israel and their service to the IDF. So Israel, I think, needs to be part of the solution. But more importantly, is the Druze need to be part of the solution for southern Syria. And so you kind of have two sort of factions here. I mean, or two ideas. One is a new, like, southern Syria autonomy zone that's pretty much Druze controlled, or they have their own sort of nation state, if you will. Those are kind of the two calls to action, because they're in a contained area. That's one. They're kind of all together. They're very community based, which is different. But again, for a guy who wants to annex everything, I don't think giving up land is going to be an option.
Well, you've got real balkanized Syria. You've got the Kurds, you've got the Druze, the Christians are pretty much wiped out. You've got HTS, you've got all these different groups in Syria, and you've got 2 million Syrian refugees in Lebanon, which need to go back to Syria, which left because of the Assad conflict.
Right.
So it's a problem, and I don't know what the U.S. government's their focus seems to disarm Hezbollah, which is great, but I don't know how that solves the Syrian issue.
Well, so this Druze delegation came and they also met before with Ambassador Huckabee and 8 Druze mayors, and these are all Israeli Druze. And so you're seeing, what's interesting is that you're seeing politicians and representatives asking for something not for themselves, but for others. And I don't think that typically happens in politics. You usually go and you meet with people and you ask, how can you help me? So there's a real, unbelievable moral compass of the Druze. And so they came to the United States. They met with the State Department. They met with several congressmen. We can talk and get into that depending on the time. And, obviously asking for a humanitarian corridor, primarily, hopefully through Israel, would be the one that they want. There's talks about Jordan, and that all the focus being on humanitarian aid into Gaza is a complete, farce. I mean, we know there's way too much aid and it's just not getting to the people because of other forces in power, while people that need aid in southern Syria are not getting it. And as of, I think, 2 days ago or 3 days ago, the State Department issued that they were getting into the humanitarian aid business for Suwaida and Syria and southern Syria to help with about 60,000 people that need medical, hygiene, water, etc., energy. And the other thing is about, in that area, I think about 187,000 people are displaced as well. So the U.S. government is getting into this, and that's an important part of the process. So the efforts of advocating are working. The U.S. needs to get involved, and then We can talk about all the political stuff that's going on with respect to sanctions in Syria temporarily being lifted when Golani, Shara came to power, and what the U.S. government is looking to do with, permanent removal of sanctions.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
For southern Syria, for all of Syria, rather.
It seems like, to me, just outside looking in, that Turkey's involved in this region. Obviously, they're behind Golani. That there's tension with Israel. It looks like the Trump administration wants to satisfy Turkey for some reason in Syria for something else, maybe with Ukraine. We don't know, but that seems to be what's happening here, in my view. What say you?
Well, just going back a little bit more historic, all these borders, they're all ridiculous borders that were drawn up by the League of Nations, and they had no respect for tribal autonomy. And so you're just you're seeing sort of, you can't change people's heritage, and they're tied to the land. And so a lot of this is land conflict. And, if you give someone land, they're planting an olive tree, effectively. Some of them actually, that's part of a tradition, not saying Druze or whatever. And that family is never leaving that land. So that's sort of a challenge. Going back to, you've got Tom Barak, who's the ambassador to both Turkey and Syria. You have a lot of Turkish pressure on this particular region. That could just be Erdogan's desire to, recreate the Ottoman Empire. And I could say all my Jewish friends. Last time I was in Istanbul, it was about 14 years ago, and it was a beautiful place. And
it's completely changed. Yeah.
A Jewish guy like me can't probably go into Turkey at this point unless I had a protective guard. And that's pretty sad that all my friends that are native Turkish Jews moved to Miami. So you've got this weird pressure on Turkey in this region. And again, I think it's symbolic of the historic, just like, Putin wants to recreate, the USSR. Yeah. It's very similar, but at the same time, there's the ethnic type cleansing that also happens in Turkey looks very similar with these hit squads in Syria outside of Suwaida, where, populations of ethnic and religious minorities are scattered. They're biblically, they're in the wilderness, if you will.
So tell us about the political effort that you were assisting here in the U.S. With the Druze coming in.
Sure. I'd say it's more religious and freedom advocacy. It's less political, but, we happen to be able to meet with the help of the National Association of Christian Lawmakers and Senator Jason Rapert, his organization, which has been phenomenal, and he's become a dear friend. He helped facilitate the meeting with Ambassador Huckabee, and then facilitated, a meeting with Senator Tom Cotton. And now the one thing about the Druze as well is, you got to get them to commit to some things. And now there was no going back. And a delegation of two Knesset members from Israel, led by MK Hamid Amar and MK Afif Abed. So MK Amar is of the opposition, and MK Afif Abed is part of the Likud coalition. So it's important that you can see both sides, and they're both Druze. They both are Druze in their background. So there's Druze representation in Israel. They came with a large delegation with some mayors from Druze villages. They met with Senator Tom Cotton, Congressman French Hill, Congressman Marlon Stutzman, Mike Lawler, Congressman Mike Lawler, and with Abraham Hamadeh, who's actually half Druze. His mother is Druze. So he's the only Druze representative in Congress. And they just had powerful meetings, coming from the heart. And again, they're Israelis that they come to the United States a lot. They're always here in Congress, but they weren't asking anything for Israel. They were asking for their brothers and sisters in Syria, which I think is the most humbling part of this process. Is there was no personal ask, and DC is about the personal ask.
Oh, it is. It is. It is.
So and I think when you explain the Christian part of this, Americans wake up because they understand that there's members of their faith being persecuted, and then it kind of is the tail wagging the dog, as opposed to the main issue is the Druze in Syria, but there's a small group of Christians. 17% is not small, but it
used to be that big. I mean, they've essentially been wiped out in Syria. I mean, I've been right there. I was just in Beirut again, and so anyone who, I'm a Christian, so that's my guys. So anyone who wants to help them is a friend of mine, and so that's why I'm highly interested in this, and would love to get some of these guys on for an interview or whatever. I don't know what connections you have, but
I'm sure we could find some. I would love to connect you, and these guys have become brothers. I mean, I just stepped in for the call. I mean, this is just I had very little knowledge of the situation, and sometimes we get into things that we're called to serve, and just develop these amazing relationships, and then so most importantly, I think for the American public, and tying this all to September 11th is kind of a heartfelt story that a lot of talk was on comparing this to October 7th in terms of the Israeli construct. In terms of devastation, yes, it looks like October 7th, but in terms of the devastation and the nature of it, it's a September 11th moment. So we were in DC the morning of September 11th, and now this is not my delegation, but I said, we are getting to New York. I'm going to New York, hell or high water, because every year I spend time at Ground Zero. And so in the morning we were in DC. They walked by the White House just to see it. There's a sign that says, Al-Golani is Osama bin Laden. And it's one of these crazy guys that makes all these protests about everything else. So they're the far left typical things, but that was the one that stood out. And we get to New York around 11 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, give or take. And the National Association of Christian Lawmakers, in an emergency, they held an emergency meeting introduced by Congressman Marlon Stutzman. They passed an emergency resolution to recognize the genocide in Syria to the Druze and to the Christians and other ethnic and religious minorities. And this is on September 11th. And I'm explaining, the Al-Qaeda forces that came and, took down 25 years ago, almost 20, we're now in the 25th year of that. And they're seeing the lights go up, or up, and all the American flags for the memory of those we lost. And I explained that the Freedom Tower being 1,776 feet tall, and that's our Declaration of Independence. And now it's our Declaration of Independence from terror. And the fact that this resolution came out on September 11th, while we were talking about this, it fully joined the Druze and the southern Syria issue with our American September 11th. And I think that's we never forget September 11th. Unfortunately, I think this world will forget October 7th. And so I know that's me as a Jewish person saying that. It sounds horrible, but it's what I unfortunately believe. It's just America didn't understand it. But they get September 11th. And so we have to find ways, just like for Christians to understand this situation, Americans have to understand that there are other Al-Qaeda forces still at play here 25 years later, and the enemy has not been defeated.
Jonathan, we'll have you back. Thank you. I've got to run, but really appreciate you. I know you're pressed for time, and I caught you in between meetings or whatever you're going on there. So thank you.
You started my morning, and I'm grateful for it, and I look forward to talking more about it. Thank you so much.
Jonathan. Take care. Ciao.